been a golden afternoon, and I remember having the familiar conviction that life was beginning over again with the sunrise.
You need to take the advice that you're giving about finance, you need to apply it to work.
Yeah.
Every day that goes by that you don't make work for yourself, even if ultimately you want to give it, share it with an audience, is the same thing that you would say to somebody who's not saving money. They are losing out on all this time with more big picture.
Yeah.
So every day that goes by that you don't do this, it's less time that you have to have a chance to make big connections.
It's the impulse buy.
Yeah.
It's this thing costs $100. I'm not going to save the $100 this week. And rather than just being like, patient, but also just like, instead of buying that, invest that into,
Well, and just also an acceptance that what we're doing with this podcast is going to take a long time.
Yeah.
We don't have like built-in.
Well, and there is no there is no, I think
we're not,
you said it's going to take a long time, but that almost implies that it's going to take a long time to get to this point.
Yeah.
I think what is so refreshing about our mindset with this is like, we came into it being like, there's no point.
That's exactly right.
It's like a monastic, just return and do it for the sake of doing it. All right. Just do it for the practice.
Yeah. Let's take what we're already doing and make something out of it.
What does this look like when we're doing this 10 years from now?
Yeah.
And we've been doing it for what does that look like? Let's find out. The only way you can do it is to commit. Like I remember the first time I went for a run, I wasn't necessarily thinking, what is this going to look like, 20 years from now when I'm running?
Right.
But it as time goes on and you continue to go for more and more runs and your relationship to it changes and you learn things that you have brilliant insights from the mundane.
Yes.
And it's like, wow, there's no other way I would have gotten to that insight. Like that wasn't an intellectual insight. That was an insight as a byproduct of repetition.
Yeah.
Almost. Really quickly, I just want to, we're not bought and paid for those who said we were bought and paid for.
We'll drink. We're equal opportunities. Sparkling
water consumption.
This just happened to be at the coffee shop, and I had the source was telling me while I was standing in line, Alex is out of Topo Chico. Get that San Pellegrino.
We are in fact out of Topo Chico.
I knew it. The source told me.
We're working on it. We're working on getting that.
Are we recording audio, Alex?
We are. We are.
We have 3 red lights, so we're good. Just want to make sure.
I guess I'm just going to contextualize and then we'll go off of this. I heard the quote the other day. We started talking about this beforehand, but I heard the quote. It was a Warren Buffett thing. We're in the Warren Buffett,
the Oracle of Omaha.
Yeah. I don't know if it was Buffett or Munger, but basically I think it was Buffett. The name of his biography is The Snowball.
Yeah.
And the concept of the snowball is you take a snowball with sticky snow, just a small snowball. If you have a long enough hill, that's going to turn into this massive force.
Yep.
So, his thing has always been just like sticky snow, long hill.
Yep.
And then things will kind of work out for themselves. It's funny too, because there's so much stuff that's happened in the last week that kind of just nails this idea home. Audrey, we went out to breakfast last Saturday, or last Sunday, and we're sitting there and she's telling me a story. So, she teaches Sunday school, and one of her kids, which is a concept that we think is very funny, that
Audrey teaches Sunday school.
Yeah.
Oh wow,
yeah,
I didn't know
awesome.
that.
She's been doing it for the entire time we've been here in Omaha.
Wow, I had no idea.
But one of the kids came up to her and basically said, like, you fold a piece of paper in half and then you fold it in half, and there's that idea of you take a piece of paper and, it's like, you fold it. If you fold a piece of paper in half 64 times or something, it'll stretch around the, and, obviously it's, I think that fits in really well with what we're talking about, though. Just the idea of little steps and how much that can actually compound over time.
I think it goes back to what
I don't want to turn this into like an investing podcast or like, we're going to dive into the principles of math, but
it doesn't,
it is
the investing doesn't have to relate just to finances. Obviously it's the first thing that we think of because it's such a easy to wrap your head around compound interest. And if I save this amount of money every week until I'm 60, I'm going to have X amount
invested at this rate, right?
At this conservative interest rate, or if I invest in an index fund or, whatever. I think, I have never been good at thinking about money in those terms. To me, it's like this money is a tool that I'm going to use to get me the thing that I want creatively, artistic, entrepreneurial, entrepreneurially. Because that's what I want to invest in. Because I think for me, whether I could really articulate it, there was sort of a general awareness of, if I want to get to a point where I have this body of work or I want to have this, or, and sometimes obviously in the more vain ego-based things, some kind of commercial result or some kind of attention result or whatever. If I want those things, like I gotta invest in this thing now. I gotta start doing the work.
Yeah.
This isn't like that story that you hear where somebody sat down and wrote a screenplay in a fever dream over a weekend and then turned it into like their friend that's in the mailroom at an agency, and all of a sudden it was a bidding war between all the studios and their career was set. I think I always knew that I was not going to be that person. And needed to just snowball. Whether it was through this, screenwriting was really where it started for me. It certainly didn't happen with acting. And then it definitely applies to creating content, building a body of work with photos. And I think about that all the time. Whether it's a photo I take with my phone and I keep for myself, or I post to an Instagram story, or a digicam or a film camera, whatever, I just think to myself, you're building a body of work one photo at a time. And whether it's something that just like my kids give to a thrift store after I die, or, it ends up being put into a book, or whatever ends up happening with it all, I'm going to build that thing one bit at a time, just like this podcast, which is like one episode at a time. And this thing has really snowballed. And when I say that, I don't mean like, again, the results that we think of, right? Subscribers, revenue, like the things that everybody wants. Like, how many subscribers do you have? How much revenue? You're like, well, that's not, we're saying to ourselves, we've done this 14, 15 times. However, what are we on? What is it? What would this be?
Something like that. Yeah.
Something like that. And just not like it's a big, output of our money or anything, but the equipment we've invested in, the systems we have for figuring out what we're going to talk about, all of it.
The building up a system and then breaking it back down to make sure it's like,
and when we say system, it's not like this like micromanaged regimented checklist of things.
I think this has been a great lesson in just simplicity. Just make it like, I don't think we faced a situation yet where it's felt like, oh, this is so much work to get this done.
No.
Like we've had, if you think about what's been accomplished, we've had content go out essentially every 3 days.
Yeah.
Since last August.
Right.
Mm-hmm. That's pretty impressive. If you go back and you're like, hey, I need you to release, 2.5 hours of content on average every month, every, 3-day clip, whatever.
Yep.
But it never has felt like a chore.
No.
And I think it's part of that is, we just try to strip it back. And I think this is my thing. And, talking about investing or the snowball effect, like the key there is the time. You have to continue to do it. Like if you want to lose
discipline.
weight, you want to go to you have to go into the gym once isn't going to change.
Put in the
anything.
reps.
Right. You have to go consistently over a long period of time.
Right.
And if you want to get better at running, you can't just run around the block one day and then, okay, I'm good now. I'm in shape or whatever. If you're training for a race, whatever the thing, or if you're just running to run, the more you do it, the more it's going to. But I think most people like, oh, I'm gonna put out a podcast, 2 podcasts a week, or like I'm gonna jump in and I'm gonna do this and this and this and this, and they make things too difficult from the start. And then there's also this human impulse to add complexity.
Yes.
I can make this better. There's a westernized idea of more complex equals better.
Yep.
And I can make this better. That's really just saying I can make this more complex.
Yep.
And then we've talked about how complexity sometimes can be in service to our own ego. And we've kind of pushed back at that whenever something comes up and we can make this more complex. And I think that's the goal. My thing has always been remove friction. If you look at everything through a long-term lens, and that's not saying everything, a long-term lens applies to everything. You can't just be the guy, like when you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail. That's, it's not the solution to everything.
No. But
test it against a long-term outlook. And if it fits, then figure out, okay, what's impeding me from doing this consistently over time? And you start removing those barriers and then just let it go.
Well, and we used the analogy before in a previous episode about, just like how to perceive of tackling the work. And I talked about, I try to break it up like 100 feet at a time, like you're on a hike up Mount Everest, right? Using that analogy, what I'm hearing from you is something like, instead of looking at your project, or not looking at your project, but taking on, you want to hike for the first time. You're going to hike Mount Everest the first time.
I'm going to go buy, I have to buy all this gear before
Why don't you start a little smaller, build up to something like that? Why does your first project have to be some massive cinematic undertaking or some huge complex? I got to hire a couple of people. I got to do that. I got to do that. Just start doing some simple things. And part of what's really caused me to, light on fire for photography is I can have what feels like an outcome that is large in scope, if you will, like let's say a photography book or an exhibition. Not that I have any of that done, but I can have a body of work that feels large in scope, but the inputs to get it are just me going out and taking photos. Now, granted, I'm not shooting large format. I'm not doing portraits where I have to kind of be a producer and make sure this person's there, wander the streets and strike up a conversation, earn someone's trust, go into their home, take a photo. There's certainly projects like that take a lot of, that are complex in that it's not just walking around the street.
Aren't worth doing.
100%.
Right.
But I'm saying to myself, like, well, you're interested in photography, instead of chewing that off right out of the gate, just like see how well you do with walking around and doing street photography or whatever. Did that for a while, decided I wanted to start a channel about it. And, that might turn into this and that might turn into that. And so what I like about this especially is we purposely tried to keep the complexity as low as possible. We used these standard definition flip cameras. We used our own equipment. We chose your studio space because it was just the vibe that, and the logistics and all that stuff, it checked all the boxes. I don't edit in Premiere Pro. You don't really either, but it has that app, that pod, what's it called? I always forget what's the name. Pod.
No free ads.
Yeah.
No, I really don't.
I'll put a link in the show notes because I literally just sent it to someone
use it
and I
all
can't
the time,
remember. But it autopod, I think. It
I think
like
it is
automatically edits our 3-camera podcast. So all these, and you could argue that's a complex thing, right?
Yeah.
But we can use it in a very simple way. So to kind of bring the broader point home. There's a little bit of, I'm talking in self-congratulatory ways here. Like, oh, look what you guys did. The point is for you who are listening or watching, it is trying to connect the sort of like realization that we've had, like, oh, like we can do this. We don't have to just like have the idea over coffee or at like get all whipped up about something at dinner with our friends and then just let it fizzle out because it's maybe more complex than we're ready to commit to or whatever. We've looked at it with that snowball perspective and said, let's just shoot a pilot and see what it's like. Okay, I see. Oh yeah, I see. Let's make these adjustments and let's do another one. Yeah. And then another one. And all of a sudden it's just automatic. Yeah,
it's easy.
And to the point where when we took a break for the holidays and your family situation, like something's off, something's missing, something's been amputated, the phantom limb feeling. And that's certainly been the case. When you mentioned that, Sunday might be booked for you and we had to go on Thursday, I was a little, I had liked that last Sunday session we did to where I'm like, wow, we got like 4 hours. It was 2 podcasts, like there's something, like you're doing even more work. But it's that much more rewarding. So, for me, that's my big takeaway from this is once you shift that mindset. There's a good energy to
that too, but
once you can have that shifted mindset to chipping away at something, understanding that for most people, it's going to take a lot of time to build something. And not only, and I don't mean, again, build 100,000 subscribers, silver play button, or this many people are watching the podcast. I mean,
or like body of work or a feature film.
To just have 100 episodes of a podcast. And even if you only have 50 subscribers, that you have this body of work that you have established, that you are capable of being disciplined and consistent and, all of that. Like it's doable.
I think one thing that's interesting about the visual metaphor of the snowball is like you can look at it a couple of ways. One, like you're the snowball, and different things you do in your life are increasing the stickiness, and or you could think of it as like every little project is its own snowball. And like once it's rolling down the hill and it's gathered enough weight, you don't have to push it or restart it. There's no effort involved. It literally is momentum is carrying it down the hill.
Perpetual motion.
Yeah, exactly. Right. There's the, people always use that word. It's just like, object in motion. But I think there's something like you can roll a lot of snowballs. And like start with just little pebbles, right? Just roll the pebbles and then.
And it's okay if some of them don't.
If some of them don't make it. Some of them stop. And it's like all right. Some of them you might have to,
but if you have none going, that to me is my worst nightmare.
Well, and I think it's interesting though, because once you get enough going, like they just go.
Sure.
And they kind of like you don't have to suddenly pause everything else in your life and like, oh, I need to put all the effort back into this snowball. It's kind of just routine. It's like sleeping. You're not going to go too many days without sleeping. And yes, that's a biological need, but it almost creates like a similar effect of
it's not an option to not have it. It's just second nature.
And when that's, if you've been thoughtful about what snowballs you've rolled down, then you're going to, I don't want to say reap the benefits, because again, there is this whole like structure that implies. But maybe you are reaping the benefits. Maybe that is the.
Well, and I wrote down about the complexity thing, and for me specifically, and for other people that I've spoken to, I've watched people have a very complex idea or a way of executing that idea. And the complexity, and by complexity, I might mean it requires multiple cameras or multiple people to help you, or it's like a very long-term project, like this is like, I'm going to take a photo of this place every 2 weeks for 3 years. And like, that's the project, You know, while that seems very simple, it's a big time commitment, which could be something that's daunting and feels complex just simply because you know you have to do that. I have it on Do Not Disturb, so sorry, Cody. Cody must. I think Cody's a favorite of mine, so he broke through. Cody's calling me. Sorry, Cody. I'm gonna have to send you to voicemail.
Don't tell him why.
Yeah.
We'll see if he's a fan.
We'll see if he's watching. Yeah, because then we'll know if he's watching because it'll be like, yeah. So the point being, do people create those complex projects knowingly, maybe subconsciously, because then it makes it easier to avoid doing it. And it's like a form of self-sabotage. Like my big grand idea for this thing. And then it's like, I've got it and it's great up in my head. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it this time. And they don't because they've made it so complex that there's just so many more opportunities to just say, fuck it. I'm just going to watch another episode of,
Mad Men.
Mad Men.
No, that raises the question, at least in my mind, like, do you think it's a common, I guess, how common do you think it is for people to subconsciously self-sabotage? Like, and this is completely like, I'm not being like, oh, well, I think this, what is your thought on this? Like, I haven't really spent a lot of time thinking about this. I think some people do self-sabotage.
I do too. Absolutely.
Do you think
100%
more people self-sabotage than not? Like what?
I don't know. In my circles,
you're like everybody. So no,
I don't know if it's, yeah, I mean, self-sabotage.
I guess
there's so many.
Maybe we define what we mean by self-sabotage too. I just think that's an interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's a subconscious psychological phenomenon. Like it's.
For me, I think it's just. I mean, because I think sometimes in the traditional way we think of self-sabotage, we think of like destructive behavior, like that like causes harm to yourself. And I don't mean like physical harm necessarily, but
saying something that,
like something like for me in this context, self-sabotage means, especially in this specific topic of creating, the snowball and building work and a body of work and discipline and consistency and all that stuff. It would be, I'm going to make this thing. There's all these projects I want to take on. I've got a lot of client work, or I've got a full-time job, or I've got all this stuff going on that, it's just not an option to not do that stuff. But I still have a dream, or I still have a desire to make work. Self-sabotage to me is, in that instance, whatever excuses or things you come up with to make you feel better about choosing not to do it. Yeah. About choosing not to see it through.
And you think those are sometimes innate from the onset of the project?
I think so. I think sometimes we might be thinking in such grand terms because of our confidence, maybe because of our ego, because we're consuming stuff that is so incredible, whether it's a Paul Thomas Anderson film or somebody's like a crazy YouTube channel that just does amazing work, whatever it is that we're consuming. And we know we're capable of that if we have the right ingredients. I have these cameras, or I have these people I can get to help me, or whatever. Like, I can do that. So when I think of my idea, it's going to be that, big, grand, maybe complex project. The magnum opus, is that the right word? Magnum opus, the masterpiece or whatever. And we maybe
the masterpiece.
We maybe come up with those ideas on such a grand scale because we know when we come back down to reality from that place of high inspiration, high motivation, excitement, all of that. We can use how grand that vision is. Well, I can't get 3 people to volunteer to do this. Yeah. The cost to rent those cameras, and I can only do it with those cameras. The amount of time editing it, whatever. You just start talking yourself out of doing it.
Do you think that's like and this is on because I wrote down, let's break down the dynamics of completion or success.
Yeah.
And so, you know, yeah, you're looking at something that inspires you and you're like, I'm inspired to go make something like that.
And we've had plenty of conversations, whether our conversation got you inspired about something for you,
Right.
something for us to do, something for me to do, etc.
Right. So, but like, let's say, yeah, you watch a movie and you're like, wow,
Yeah.
can't do that. Like, you know, is the instinct maybe just, I guess what I'm trying to is like, do you think that that self-sabotage is inherent from the start? And we'll go beyond self-sabotage because I do want to move into like what can be done to kind of counteract these negative forces. You know, if these are the negative forces, the self-sabotage, the doubt, the, you know, failure to meet expectation, the gap.
Yeah.
If these are the negative forces, then like
The resistance.
what is the positive that can counter, or what are some positive forces that can, you know, simplicity, obviously,
Yeah.
Simplifying the process at first, momentum, things like that. But I'm interested in on this idea of like self-sabotage. Is that something where is it like your eyes are bigger than your stomach type of situation? Or is it, do you think it is like you get in and then you don't know enough to know that you don't know enough, and then you get far enough in and you hit a wall because you're like, oh wow, this is actually impossible? Or do you think it's like you're subconsciously, you know that you're gonna have an out anyways? Like basically what I'm saying is it predestined to run into a wall, or is it like, oh, ran into a wall, can you adjust and move past it?
My feeling would be that I think that self-sabotage is a symptom of a greater issue with your mindset, with your perspective on making work.
Do you think there's certain people that don't self-sabotage at all?
Who have
Like
where
maybe-
self-sabotage is not a symptom of that mindset?
Exactly. Like, or they have a mindset that doesn't allow for that.
I'm just going to say it's possible, but
Yeah.
I would have to sit here silently thinking about it for a while, like running through my inventory of experiences.
I don't have like a fixed opinion.
No,
on this
no.
Like,
I mean,
we're exploring in real time, people.
Yeah, we are
Like,
100% exploring
Yeah.
this in real time. But yeah, that to me is, you know, I feel like what I'm thinking of self-sabotage to be is a symptom of a mindset that has unique ingredients of, for me, the person that I see, someone with high confidence, maybe sometimes arrogance or ego, some stuff going on there. I see someone that has done complex work, but they haven't made their work. So they're capable of a lot. Somebody who has, this sounds weird, but like sort of visionary thinking, like they have a lot of ideas. They're someone that has been like, oh yeah, you know that thing? I had that idea 15 years ago, and not like in a shitty way, like that person's lame.
And just like I actually think like you're modeling off of a specific, I guess, type of person, and you're not modeling. I think you do have some of these qualities, but I just want to clarify. Like I have context as to some of where the model is coming from. Well, he's not modeling off of himself in this situation, and I think you share qualities, but I just like I don't like you're not like. I just want to kind of quell the idea of you're like, oh, I think, you know, this person, because he actually does have a model in mind. I
have several. Yeah. You know, I think there's people that I have been in contact with that that I'm thinking of. Yeah. But then there's also myself.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
And not necessarily.
I just wanted to like squash the idea that you're not like, you know.
But part of me talking about this is self-examination. It is self-awareness. I am going, what elements of this mindset may not affect my photography or my YouTube work or other work I'm doing, but do affect why I'm not doing TED Snow, or why I'm not tackling other more ambitious ideas that I have. Because they are complex. They do have a lot of complex moving parts, whether it's help or not that I have an idea specifically, but like putting a Kickstarter together and getting money or pitching something at the studios or a video idea I have or whatever it is. So I think it is accessing my own experiences and my interpretation of what I've seen from other people. And then also my understanding based on what other people have told me with their issues with making stuff. And this is something, you know, as we have conversations like this where we're relatively an open book to each other with our frustrations, our shortcomings, our self-sabotage, our triumphs, everything that we've done that we're excited about, proud of, whatever. That dynamic between us exists with me and other people as well, right, where you have conversations that you could argue are sort of a therapy session, for lack of a better term, where there's an open exchange, being vulnerable, truthful, forthcoming, and really people that can deploy self-awareness and go, I think this is what's happening with me and why I'm not doing what I want. Because a lot of this comes from essentially conversation with people that are going, if I could design my life, it would be this, but my actual life is this. And, you know, I don't sit there and go, well, let me tell you how to get to where I am because I've designed my life. And let me tell you, every box is checked.
Yeah.
But I do think that I maybe for those people have a couple more boxes checked than they do. And we're drawn to each other because I like talking to people about ways they can think of things differently or try this or do this to see if they can get those boxes checked. And I think they might like talking to me because I was in some instances where they were, and I kind of figured a few things out to at least get a little bit further along.
It's funny because it is like different sides have different boxes checked.
Yeah.
Like some, like there's boxes that
and they have boxes checked that I don't have checked.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just interesting how.
And so there's, well, you're kind of doing this. Well, you're kind of doing that. How do I do what you're doing? Well, how do I do what you're doing? Yeah. And so it is, those conversations typically are, you know, a two-way street, you know? So I do think that, just to bring it home, that self-sabotage is a symptom of a mindset where it goes back to Mad Men. A lot of people are doing what's expected of them instead of what they want.
Yeah.
And I think self-sabotage is a way of kind of saying, I just feel like I have to do what's expected of me. People expect these things. They expect me to pay for this. They expect me to provide this. They expect me to do this. I want to keep up with my peers. I want to, whatever those, the construct, I always like kind of refer to I don't even know what it's called, but like commerce and earning a living and the pressure we have from social media and all that to have a house and to have this and to have all these milestones and this sort of like definition of success versus where I feel like people look at my situation and go, Matt seems capable of a lot. Why does he have this little rink-a-dink house? Or why does he have one 20-year-old car and then a nice one? Why isn't his garage inside drywalled? Why, why are these things there with someone that kind of seems like he has it figured out, you know? And I say the same thing to my friends that are like, you checked all the success boxes, you know, what we expect of you to have a house and savings and retirement and investments in stocks and all that, but you're so unhappy. Whereas I'm very happy and fulfilled. I have my moments, of course. I'm not like 24/7 just happy, but I'm like, I'm on the right track. Like this is working. I'm getting to where I want to go.
I hate to like just bury this snowball metaphor, bury it in the snow. But you know, it's like, maybe you realize that your ball's rolled down the wrong hill. Like you're at least your ball's rolling down the right hill. You know, it might be going slower down that hill, but like that's better than realizing halfway, 3/4 of the way down the hill that, oh shit, the hill I wanted to roll down was over there.
Yeah.
Now do I have to walk to the top of this one and then start with another tiny ball on that hill?
Yep.
And that's the death of the snowball metaphor. I'll try not to bring that one back, but
And the idea of that is so daunting that most people just,
Well, I'm so close to the bottom of this hill. Let's just finish
I'm
it
gonna
off.
stick. Yeah, I'm gonna ride
That's
it
so
out.
depressing.
I know, and I think so much of what I've done my whole life is to push back against that. And it's not like, oh, I'm like some profound artist and I've avoided the construct and I don't need to make money and I don't, I'm living this bohemian life where I've just I don't give a shit about savings and retirement or having, a newer car or whatever. All that stuff is in there. But for me, ultimately, I sit there and I go, if I don't wake up every day excited to make work, even if it's work that is to promote Film Convert Nitrate and get a little bit of a commission off of it, or going out and, doing street photography that I'm going to put together in a book in a year that maybe I print one copy and that's all that ever happens with it.
Yeah.
Or I write a poem or I outline a screenplay or whatever. If I'm not waking up every day, making those things and earning some kind of living from making what I want to make every day, I think I will be a disaster. I already have enough anxiety. I pick my cuticles and I get agitated and I have, sometimes a little bit of a short temper with myself. All these things that are externalizations of that struggle. If I was every day like punching in or doing something that I just detested,
and
I would be.
I also want to like clarify, like this is one way to look at it.
100%.
Some people some people get true enjoyment from that. So it's not that one way is
No.
in our scenario, it does feel like we found a nice little pocket.
Yes, and yeah, for me, and I've certainly had like career type employment, post-production supervisor at a production company, and I was not miserable doing that, but it was also part of the strategy of getting to a point where I could figure out how I'm going to do my own thing. How am I going to make sure that when I wake up, I'm making the work that I want to make, even if it was more success in screenwriting and I'm working with producers or a studio executive and I'm getting notes like the one you just got for your project where you just like, what? And that is difficult, but I'm sitting there going, I'm writing a movie and I'm getting paid to do it.
Yeah.
I go back to when I was a cashier at a grocery store. I was a cashier on and off through high school and college for 10 years. And when I stood there at the cash register, I was dead inside.
Yeah.
And, you're 17 or you're 21 and you're on summer break from college or whatever. Like you're not out there trying to like figure out what you're going to do with your life as far as your career. Sure, you're in school for acting or you're in school for this or whatever, but you're not, at least I was, and I wasn't like, how do I keep moving toward that goal in the summer by having a job that's related to that? I was like, well, I'm just going to do the easy thing and get my job back at the grocery store and, and ring people up.
Yeah.
And, I would just be screaming on the inside, like, I don't want to be here. I don't want to be here. I don't want to be, this is not what I want to do. And, for me, I've just focused so much of my energy on figuring out how to never feel that again.
Yeah.
How to never feel that way.
Do you think it's essential to feel that way at some point or not? Okay. It's not essential. There's obviously people that have, and I don't mean this in a derogatory way. There's obviously people who have avoided that feeling and still end up doing something that they love and that gives them
100%
high satisfaction.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's probably helpful to feel that way, to at least have that context, right? That counterpoint of like, oh, it can be much worse. Like,
well, it's also for me. It's just if you don't continue to push yourself, that situation could be your reality again.
yeah,
You could make decisions that put you in a really bad way financially or whatever. And the only option is to, I don't know. I took a job because I was freelancing before I had the full-time position as a post-production supervisor. And I applied to work as an at-home tech support advisor for Apple. And I would tell people what my job was. I work from home. They sent me a computer, all this stuff. And they're like, that's like a dream job. And I would have like the start of panic attacks before every shift because I had to do what they told me to do for 8 hours.
Yeah.
And even though I got in the flow of it and I kind of overcame it, you know, and whatever, then they would, you know, we would have a call where they, you know, gave me, you know, you're taking too long on your calls. You're not hitting these targets, you know, all this stuff. And I was just like, it drove me crazy.
Yeah.
Not because I think they're wrong in doing that, but that just wasn't compatible with me.
Yeah.
And, you know, all the iterations I've had on from pursuing acting and going, I don't want permission to work. Like I have to get permission for you to work. And then screenwriting. Okay, well, I can work and work and work and work. And then when I finally get done after 2 years of writing the screenplay, we take it and then I still need permission to work because this isn't the finished product. This isn't the final thing.
It's like, yeah, doing that for somebody else.
Yeah.
And then I think, the screenwriting thing is super, because, you know, writing is something that I get a lot of joy from. And, when you add in that aspect of you're writing the screenplay to sell it, and then you don't sell it. If you were optimizing that screenplay to sell, you're making sacrifice here, sacrifice here, because this isn't gonna. And then you get to the point it doesn't sell, then it can feel a little empty.
Yes,
of an exploration. Yeah. So I kind of I wrote down here. Let's break down the dynamics of competition or success. Obviously, if you're new to the show, this is where we solve
that's right
the problem of
listen up, bookmark this. This is gonna be
a breakthrough in,
that's right.
in the world of philosophy and human thought. So, you know, I think there's dynamics to it, right? And to completely oversimplify things, there's positive forces and negative forces, right?
Right.
So if we're talking about a project is so granular, right?
Yeah.
At least in my, a project might be like, oh, we're going to do a podcast or we're going to pursue these topics. But I don't know if this is a project, the podcast itself is but maybe it is. So I guess the first step is let's define what that is. But then so you start something and then, I put completion and quotation marks, but so first you have to almost set that expectation, right? What does success look like?
Right.
That's almost the first step because when we sat down, the idea of success wasn't for this. It wasn't, we want something that's wildly successful. If we would have sat down with that objective, it would be a much different approach. We want something that's financially successful. We want to hit 1 million subscribers and we want Then we would suddenly be optimizing for a completely different set of outcomes than we are.
What we would be making would be tethered to that outcome.
Right.
And in my opinion, untruthful and kind of
maybe. Maybe.
Yeah.
It kind of gets into the advertising thing, right? You're
maybe not untruthful, but just sort of
I think you can optimize to metrics and choose to still tell the truth while doing you can optimize towards a set of outcomes and choose to still, but you are locked into those.
Yeah.
We've set a very different set of expectations.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't so yeah, I mean, this, like I said, guys, we're solving some crazy
we're working
things
through
here,
this.
But, the dynamics of success, I guess it does start with defining what the heck that means in the first place.
And yes, and I think part of the sort of ingredients, one of the ingredients in me having some success in being consistent with getting work done is having an idea of what I want the outcome to be.
Yeah.
And even if it is wake up every day and do what you want and earn enough money to be a responsible adult, maybe not the most responsible adult,
but mildly responsible,
but acceptably responsible. Even if you're literally riding the razor's edge of that, at times. If you can do that as a baseline, like keep at it, obviously building from there.
So I guess, I think you develop what does success look like? And then it's all about doing what you can to get the momentum. I think, right. It's when you started your channel, you started with 1 subscriber.
Yep.
2 subscribers.
I had 53 subscribers, I remember, for like
a long time.
Over a year.
Long time.
Yeah.
I remember that too.
Yeah.
And then like,
yeah,
this, I'm using the channel just because I think for most people that is an easy, like, people are watching this on YouTube probably.
You know what's easier? A snowball.
A snowball. Said we'd kill that, man. But yeah, you started from a very insignificant point and you slowly gained. So you set the idea of what was the idea in that scenario? Like, what was your idea of success? Did you have one? Do you wish you would have had one? Do you think that you had to like redefine that as you went?
I think
is it possible to redefine it as you go?
I think so. And I feel like I've been redefining it a lot this year, especially. Last year, I didn't get the results that I was hoping for with the channel, whether it was revenue or subscriber growth or whatever. But I was also very focused on those things. I wasn't thinking as much, and this is my issue. I wasn't thinking as much as, are you telling the truth? Are you creating work that is your voice? You have something to say with every video, even if it's a Final Cut Pro tutorial. Like there's room to say something with what you're doing. And that doesn't mean like some weird editing style or being zany or controversial or inflammatory or whatever. It can just be, I don't know, your perspective on how nobody else is teaching this thing this way, and you're going to do it this way because that's what worked for you to learn it, whatever. And so, yes, I have shifted my point of view with how I'm going to make videos this year, and it's much more aligned with everything we've learned and talked about between you and me. A lot of it's fueled by these conversations. It's fueled by reading Rick Rubin's book, listening to his podcast, Stephen Pressfield's The War of Art, like all this stuff that you're consuming, stories about other artists from all time and what they went through and what they've done and all of that stuff. So I think that can shift. To answer your question, I remember when I shifted the focus of my channel from videos about a person running a production company to... I
remember those.
Yeah, to more like educational Final Cut Pro tutorials. Really, what I was grappling with at that moment, especially as the pandemic set in, was I'm tired of needing permission to work. I'm in my 3rd career, if you will. Acting, permission to work. Screenwriting, permission to work. Video production company trying to work with clients, permission to work. We want to hire you. I'm tired of needing permission to make the thing that I think is going to be awesome or help your business achieve its goals or whatever. So I need to just make stuff that I want to make that goes directly to an audience. But then something that might actually earn some revenue so that I don't have to depend on getting on the stuff that needs permission to work as much. I can build something over here where I have a connection directly to an audience, it earns revenue, and then these types of things with the production company or the screenwriting is optional. And it's not devastating when it doesn't happen. I'm not in a scarcity mindset all the time. I'm not pricing things out of desperation or fear. I'm not in this to me, just an unhealthy mindset with the approach to the work. And as this thing started to snowball, it got to the point where all I had to do to be on that razor's edge of a responsible adult was that stuff. And the client work or be a B-cam operator in a shoot or help somebody make their documentary for pay, whatever. That stuff was icing on the cake, if you will, or optional. I didn't have to have it. I could say no and I'd be okay.
Yeah.
And so that being in that place was part of the component. Well, one of the components of success for me.
It's so interesting because I honestly, the more we sit here, it's just like, just move forward. You know, like we just spent a bunch of time talking before you gave that answer of, well, do you start by defining what success looks like?
Yeah.
And it's like, maybe you just move, but then like the counterpoint to that is we started this whole conversation off by talking about examples in our mind of people who moved and just got caught up in the day to day.
Yeah.
And then they got too far into something and couldn't. So it's like, it's such a paradox because it's I mean, just go. But then it's like, well, you know, if you just go, then you might get caught.
Yeah.
So if only we could find some solution to this now. You know, it's tough. It's a tough thing to diagnose.
And for me, it was always...
I think the best results that we've had are just move, continue to move, and then maybe it's not just moving, because if you get into the movement and you just keep going, you're not reevaluating. Maybe there has to be some aspect of like always reevaluating. Like you reevaluated, you hit a pretty, you know, for you it was the pandemic comes along and shuts down all your productions, and then you're like, yeah, I really don't want to do this, and you kind of shifted and changed the trajectory a little bit.
And throughout all of that, and I think this applies to, you know, actors, it applies to directors, playwrights, painters, anybody that is pursuing that kind of life. You get an idea. Oh, I'm gonna try this, or I'm gonna go. My idea of success is this, or you know, I have an idea to make this thing, whatever it is, and then you do, and then maybe that like becomes too much your thing, and you're like, well, I kind of want to break out. I want to break away from that, but then this new way of doing it isn't quite the right fit either. It's just, to me, it's just like a Goldilocks thing. You're constantly kind of evaluating the beds and the porridge, and and it's shifting as you go. And I think, you know, even somebody like Steven Spielberg or Bradley Cooper, you know, you always hear those stories about actors that like the pendulum swung a little too far into commercial fare. And so they just like, I'm almost willing to work for free just to do a small little indie film. And I'm not trying to get an Academy Award. I just want to do work that's fulfilling and meaningful and has an impact. And it isn't something that's so studio driven or commercial or whatever. You hear stories like that all the time. Spielberg, you know, always talks about how if he doesn't feel nervous or uncomfortable on set, like he's not doing something he should be doing. Yeah. I was just watching a YouTube video about these guys that like went to Compton and knocked on doors to ask people if they could make them dinner. Yeah. And their efforts kind of took off on social media, and this gentleman who was the White House chef found out. He's in the Los Angeles, Southern California area, and he asked if he could come help them. Yeah. And he says in the video, he's like, the reason I did this was because my mom always told me that if I'm going to do something and I'm not afraid, I'm not doing the right stuff. And he's like, this made me afraid, so I'm doing it. Yeah. And I'm not saying that's the right way for everybody to live.
That's an interesting tidbit, though, is like chase the fear a little bit. Yeah. Because, I mean, there's an aspect of fear every time we sit down and do one of these. Mm-hmm. Like there's an aspect of, oh, well.
Every time I go do street photography.
I don't have anything interesting to say, which, you know, who knows? We might not have anything interesting to say. But that's not for us to judge. And that's not, you know, some people are going to find some of it interesting. Some people are going to not find it interesting.
Just like everything that's made in the world. Exactly. Whether it's a product or a piece of work.
So I think at the end of the day, it's just like, yeah, you know, chase after that fear a little bit. Don't overthink anything.
Especially if it's coupled with, I have something to say.
Yeah.
I have a point of view.
But,
I have
you know,
a perspective.
don't, again, we talked about this in the pre-show of just like, we're kind of just all playing games. Yeah. Like it or not, we're kind of just all playing games, and don't take yourself too seriously. Don't take what you're doing too seriously, because the minute you start to take yourself too seriously, or the minute you feel comfortable in the boat and you're like, whoa, let's try not to rock it too much. Yep. You know, that's, you're starting the decline at that point. Yeah. So don't take yourself too seriously. Chase after fear. These are good little postcard nuggets, or like wall posters, but I mean, I think there's a lot of truth to it. Like, don't take yourself too seriously, chase after fear. Momentum is a good thing. Don't overcomplicate stuff. There's just all of these things that go into getting things done. Don't worry about what other people think.
What's expected versus what you want.
And some of these things, the inverse is just as true as you can approach, don't worry about what other people think.
Yeah.
But then maybe it's like, do worry about what other people think. Like maybe that's also useful in a scenario.
Well, I think it's also accepting that there isn't like some utopian scenario you can achieve, the nirvana of pure altruistic artistic creation where what you do takes care of the construct in the rat race.
Answer. There's no
I have money, but I have no stress from it. All my bills are paid. I live in a studio that's out in the middle of nowhere, and I just make work every day, and I make what I want, and everybody loves it. I never grapple with anything. That's not fun.
Like the duality. Embrace the total chaos and messiness of everything, and then embrace the total order, and simultaneously embrace the order and the. Yeah. I think it's that's an interesting, with this episode kind of acting as a metaphor. Like we're just chasing loose ends to find that they're not connected to anything.
Right.
And then you go back and you chase another loose end, and then you come to the end and it's like, well, what was the point? It was like, I don't know, what was the point?
Well, and for me, especially just us chasing loose ends in these episodes, and on some of these episodes where we're working through something versus some of the episodes where we're coming in hot with a topic, we have either expertise or a very strong opinion, very strong feelings about it that we can, nope, it's this.
At that current moment in time. Right.
And for me, this is, and what I hope people listening and watching are also on a journey to do is just, it's to increase our understanding of everything that's led up to this point, but knowing that we're never going to achieve a place of this perfect understanding. Yeah. And like, finally, I got it all figured out and I'm good.
Yeah, we're going to be discussing the same stuff.
I'm taking pictures, I'm making videos, I've got money in the bank. Like we got nothing left to talk about, bro. We've got it all done.
We did it. Check it out.
We did it. All done.
Yeah.
So for me, what I'm doing and what I'm working on and my perception of it, all of that stuff has been greatly informed by this podcast, greatly informed by, videos and stuff and essays and books that you've shared with me, stuff that I've found myself, other people have shared with me. And, being a sponge for that kind of input to help me get a better understanding of what works for me in achieving my goal, which is to create a body of work that I like, that I'm done. And I have photos or documentary films, YouTube videos, a podcast, all of this stuff that I can step back from and go, I'm not, on the Mount Rushmore of podcasters. I'm not on the Mount Rushmore of filmmakers. I'm not this person who's achieved greatness in street photography.
The whole concept of that is just kind of, it's, there's always something to be said for it. And when you're in the space, there's always, but when you step back, 100,000 foot view, you can't belittle it, but also you can't take it as seriously.
Yeah.
Maybe that.
Yeah. Because at the end of the day, the body of work it's a symbol of you woke up and did what you wanted to do. And I don't mean what you wanted.
Culture is so obsessed at the current moment in time. Our culture is so obsessed with this idea of greatness, being the greatest to do something. I
don't know that they are. I wonder if we're more obsessed with fame and attention than actual greatness, making great work.
The idea of being the greatest brings this, debate with it and this argument, and it's all, it's the classic, like who's better, like the GOAT, Jordan or LeBron, or like, and then that's been appropriated by brands and leveraged by, press teams.
Yeah, there's
across the country to.
I have felt like I have heard good conversations about greatness, though, in a more pure, a pure, less ego-driven.
I think you kind of nailed, like, I think we'd be more productive as a society if it was just like wake up and, you know, is it a Steve Jobs quote? No,
Yeah.
it's a Bob Dylan
It's
quote.
4:23.
Yeah, you got to get out
I
here.
gotta go. 5
There's
minutes.
I think it's a Bob Dylan quote where it's like success is if I wake up in the morning, I go to bed at night, and in between only do what I want to do or something. And if we could reframe it as that a little bit more, and if there's anything we're pitching.
Right. And I want people to understand, and I know probably the bulk of our audience are people that are trying to make work. They're, involved in artistic stuff, creative stuff. It's not do whatever I want. Like, I'm going to watch, Seinfeld reruns and eat ice cream and like spend a bunch of money and, like just bullshit. It's not just do whatever I want. Like it's Home Alone or something. It's to have like a strong desire and intentionality in making work, like self-expression, whatever you want to call it, having something to say, like funneling all of that stuff through the work that you make, photography, painting, sculpting, writing, whatever. And for some, it can be working at an advertising agency and writing incredible copy or coming up with that amazing take on, Hardee's, or like, it doesn't have to be like, it doesn't mean that the only way to feel this way or to achieve this is by working for yourself, not having a job or getting a salary or an hourly wage. Like there's so many, there's people that are doctors, EMTs, whatever, and they are doing what I'm trying to do.
Yeah.
Feel that way. Where work doesn't feel like work. This is, this is what I want to do with my life. This is my mission.
Yeah.
And I never wanted to be off of that.
Right.
Now it took a while to kind of figure out, and it changes, actor, screenwriter. It's
always going to develop.
Production company. Like I'm trying, and that's another thing too. Like comparing myself to other people's trajectories and going, well, they didn't bounce around from all this stuff, so you must be doing something wrong because they fit your vision of success.
I feel like everybody kind of bounces around though, whether it's in medium or in subject matter.
Right. But I think
everybody kind of bounces.
But I think we latch onto the outliers. Well, Spielberg started at 8 years old making 8mm films, and he had a linear trajectory through it. And because everybody models what they want off of him or Kubrick or this person or that person, but then when they actually dig in,
it's like you're modeling off of 4 people.
Yeah, the outliers,
and the history of like the billions and billions and billions.
And that's part of, what we get exposed to in the media. And I don't mean like a conscious effort by the media to only show us the outliers. Although there may be, those people tend to bubble up their stories. Their stories are
a subconscious.
And we start to go, well, I can do that. And when it doesn't happen, we rake ourselves over the coals or we don't even get started because we say, well, if I can't be him, didn't we talk about this? Like, I'm Scorsese, but.
Well, it's like the sooner you just, I think it's the sooner you just start doing your own thing.
Yeah.
Like, and not necessarily in like doing your own thing. And like, you can do your own thing while working for a corporation. You can do your own thing while working at a grocery store.
Yes.
But like when you like, the sooner you just start being whatever,
doing what you want,
your primal self.
Yeah.
Like, and I don't mean, following every urge or whatever, but it's like you're just, when you've removed that kind of projection or that modeling that happens, I think you're better off. And everybody's got a lot to offer. Everybody's got a lot to offer. They just need to kind of like spend time figuring out who they are, what they have. Like, I like it's that's such a general concept. Like that's such a large concept that it's hard to, like, I have something and I know that those words don't quite explain what I'm trying to say.
Yes.
And I don't want to like, you got to get out of here. I don't want to continue. But yeah, I think it breaks down to just like you have a truth.
Yeah.
Or like something.
Yeah.
And just follow that.
Yep. Yeah. You're in the flow of what you're supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
And this is, in the last couple of years, is the closest I feel like I've been
to just
having that on one side, the responsible adult stuff, what's expected of you, because I do have to make money.
Yeah,
I do have to put food on the table. I do have to do those things. But then I'm also going every day going, holy shit, it's 4:00. Oh my God, I had such a great time today editing a video or editing my photos or whatever. And it's helping me
work towards.
It had been a golden afternoon, and I remember having the familiar conviction that life was beginning over again with the sunrise.